95% of corporate AI projects fail to deliver any measurable financial return. That statistic came from MIT, and by the end of last summer, it had been repeated in boardrooms, at conferences, and across nearly every business publication that covers technology. It's also one of the most disputed numbers in the entire AI conversation. Not because it's fake, because almost nobody citing it read the actual report closely enough to know what it really measured, or that the researchers who wrote it have a stake in the answer. This is the frontier economy. Let's see what the data actually shows. In July of last year, a team at MIT's Media Lab, working under something called Project NAMDA, published a report titled The Gen AI Divide. 4 authors, Aditya Chalapalli, Chris Pease, Ramesh Raskar, and Pradyumna Chari. Their method: interviews with 52 organizations, survey responses from 153 senior leaders, and a review of more than 300 publicly disclosed AI projects, all conducted between January and June of that year. Their headline finding: only about 5% of AI pilots were reaching what they called sustained, measurable impact on a company's actual profit and loss. The other 95% stalled somewhere between a promising demo and real business results. Here's something worth noticing before we go further. A large number of the articles that cite this exact study get the sample size wrong. Some report 150 interviews instead of 52. Some report 350 surveyed leaders instead of 153. The 95% figure gets repeated correctly almost everywhere. The methodology behind it gets garbled surprisingly often by writers who are citing MIT by name on a report MIT itself labeled preliminary findings, not peer-reviewed research. Here's the part that deserves more attention than it gets. By the time anyone went back to check the report closely, the number had already done its work. Fortune reported the finding in mid-August, within days of separate comments from OpenAI's own CEO raising the word bubble about AI investment. Tech stocks tumbled, the Nasdaq's steepest single-day drop in weeks, a major chip maker down over 3%, another AI-linked company down nearly 10%, and the sell-off spread to markets in Asia the same week. Fortune's own coverage was careful to note both things were happening at once, not that the MIT report alone caused it. But a single preliminary report, not yet peer-reviewed, had already become part of a market-moving story before anyone outside its 4 authors had verified what it actually measured. The 95% figure didn't just get repeated, it got scrutinized by people who actually read the report closely, not just the headline. Kevin Werbach, a professor at Wharton, went through the report's own charts and data tables and said the 95% conclusion was difficult to derive from what the report itself actually showed. His challenge to the authors was direct: publish the complete underlying data or withdraw the claim. A separate technology publication, Futurium, raised a related concern. With data drawn from only 52 organizations, out of many thousands of companies actively experimenting with generative AI worldwide, the sample may be too narrow to support a claim this sweeping. And there's a structural detail worth sitting with. Project NAMDA's own stated mission is to build infrastructure for autonomous, decentralized AI agents, a more advanced approach than the chatbot-style tools most companies were piloting in this study. If most current approaches are the ones failing, the approach NAMDA is building starts to look like the obvious upgrade. That doesn't make the finding wrong. It does mean the people measuring the failure rate have a real interest in what the failure gets blamed on. If you've made a real decision at work based on one of these AI failure statistics, tell us in the comments in one word: paused or proceeding. Here's where this gets genuinely interesting. MIT's 95% isn't the only failure number circulating. Rand Corporation has been widely cited for a figure above 80%, but Rand's own published summary is more careful than most of the coverage repeating it, framing it as by some estimates, not as a number their own interviews directly produced. S&P Global surveyed over 1,000 IT and business leaders and found 42% of companies abandoned most of their AI initiatives in a single year, up sharply from 17% the year before. And Gartner has repeatedly cited a figure near 40% of agentic AI projects being cancelled by 2027. Here's the twist. Of those four, MIT's report is the one that actually published its sample size, its research period, and its methodology, which is exactly what let Werbach and others go find real problems with it. Gartner's 40% figure, by contrast, appears to have no publicly disclosed survey, sample, or underlying calculation attached to it anywhere. So the report that got the most public criticism is also the only one transparent enough to be checked at all. Scrutiny isn't a sign a number is weak. Sometimes it's the only sign a number was ever exposed to real scrutiny in the first place. The honest read: every one of these studies, measured differently, is pointing the same direction. High adoption, low follow-through. What separates the minority that succeed isn't a secret, and it's worth sitting with if your own company is somewhere in this process right now. MIT's own report found a consistent pattern. The winners were far more likely to buy an existing, narrowly focused AI tool built for one specific task, rather than build a custom system in-house that needs ongoing engineering investment just to keep working. And they were more likely to deploy that tool in back-office operations, the unglamorous work of processing invoices, managing procurement, or handling supply chain paperwork, rather than the more visible, more heavily piloted work of sales and marketing chatbots, which look impressive in a demo, but are harder to make reliable once real customers and real edge cases show up. If your own company is somewhere in the middle of an AI rollout right now, tell me in the comments. I might dig into what separates the successful minority in a future episode. That's the frontier. Subscribe, and the next one lands in your inbox before anyone else's.